Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love creative people. I like to support them. I like to lift them up. I think art and creativity make the tough times bearable, and I find that out every day when I'm freaked out about the world and then I go see a play or a movie or something like that, and I am okay for a while. And today is a special Tony Week episode because I have a very successful Broadway producer as my guest. His name is Jeffrey Seller. He produced the musicals In the Heights, Rent, Hamilton, and Avenue Q, all 4 won Best Musical at the Tony Awards. And he's also the author of a new book called Theater Kid, a Broadway Memoir. And I related so much to this book. I am born like a couple weeks before Jeffrey. So the times that we were growing up in, what the world was like, going to college during the AIDS crisis, things like that, I related so much to his story. Especially stuff around his family, and it was just a beautiful read, and it was very well written, and I was so excited to talk to Jeffrey, and he gave me a lot of time, so I could have gone on for another hour, but it's a pretty long episode, but there's a chunk of it that I'm going to put on my Patreon and my Substack to kind of entice you there. I talked to Jeffrey about his favorite moments from those 4 musicals that I listed, Rent, Hamilton, In the Heights, and Avenue Q, and that's going to be available on the Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay Patreon and or Substack. So, yeah, I started a Patreon or Substack, and it's called Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay. I do some of the same kind of stuff that I do on this podcast with creative people and things like that, but I also have a section dedicated to the science of happiness. I got very interested in that in the last 5-10 years or so. It's helped me kind of deal with my life, and I like sharing those ideas. I'm very interested in it as a topic, and so that's kind of one of the focuses of that. So if you go to Substack or Patreon and search Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay, you can subscribe to that, and there's going to be a mix of free content and paid content on there. So if you want to support me, you can subscribe for $5 a month, but there's also going to be free content on there as well, including Jeffrey's favorite moments from those 4 musicals. So go check that out. It's going to be our little Tony sneak preview moment. All right. Before I get to that, though, I also want to remind you that there's another way you can support this podcast. You could become a subscriber to Derek and Romaine's DNR Studios. I'm part of a group of shows under the Derek and Romaine banner, and for a monthly fee, you get my show early, and you get all these other great shows. So check that out at dnrstudios.com. Also, if you want to go to DennisHensley.net, there is a virtual tip jar there. If you want to just kick in a little and say that you appreciate the podcast. And I got a very nice tip and nice message from a listener who is actually a former guest. I want to give a shout out to Kyle Henry. He was on the podcast a few months ago talking about his documentary, and I got to interview him in person, and he just sent me a nice little note and a little tip, and I really appreciate it. So I think that might be enough for the plugs, but it isn't. It actually isn't. This is a show that's going to drop right before the Mismatch game happens at the Gay and Lesbian Center, the Renberg Theater, on the 7th of June. It's our Priding in Plain Sight episode. I'm going to be hosting. We have a killer lineup of performers: Jackie Beat, Sam Pancake, Nadia Ginsburg, Tom Lenk, Kirsten Vangsness doing the show for the very first time, and Danny Casillas as Reba Arriba. So get your tickets to that. If you go to my Instagram, there's a links page, and you can find the tickets there, or go to LALGBTcenter.org. All right, I think that's all the plugs, right? Let's get into the interview. Here is Jeffrey Seller. Joining me now from Broadway in New York, literally on the street Broadway, it's Jeffrey Seller. He is the Tony-winning producer of Avenue Q, In the Heights, Rent, and Hamilton. And he has a new book out called Theater Kid, a Broadway Memoir. And I just devoured it, and I'm so excited to talk to you. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Dennis. So happy to be here with you today.
We were born a few weeks apart. So I related to so much of your book, like that timing, so many different parts of it, which we will get into. But this is going to drop on my podcast Tony Week, and it's such an exciting season. So I just wanted to get your feeling about this moment in Broadway, because there's a moment in your book where there's not a lot of new musicals happening. Things are kind of dead. And you give a speech at this kind of panel about how, I don't know, it just feels like like Broadway's kind of feels, I'm in in Los Angeles now, but it feels like It's an amazing moment, right? Am I crazy?
You're right on the money.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in my office, which is on the 24th floor of this old famous Paramount building. And I look down and I see the Schubert Theater that has Hell's Kitchen. And I see the Broadhurst Theater that has Boop, and the St. James Theater. They're all right down my window with Sunset Boulevard. And then, of course, right up the block, you have Moulin Rouge over at the Hirschfeld. Here's what is so great about where we are right today. We have 13 eligible new musicals on Broadway this year. And if I can give you a point of comparison, go back to 1995, which is only 1 year before Rent arrives and wins the Tony for Best Musical and the Pulitzer, and frankly, just changes Broadway forever. The year before Rent, there are only 2 musicals nominated for Best Musical. Crazy. Only 2, because that's all we had on Broadway. And one of them, a very nice review called Smokey Joe's Cafe, was a review of Lieber and Stoller songs, so it wasn't eligible for Best Book or Best Score.
Right.
Which meant that the only other musical nominated, Sunset Boulevard, won Best Book and Best Score by default.
By default. There were no others. Why is it thriving? What is it? What were the things that came together?
Investment dollars started coming to Broadway in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Obviously, the arrival of Disney played some great role, but people with money started to become more interested, and that opened up the coffers for financial investment. And that was one thing. And frankly, I have to tell you, so many of these new contemporary musicals that have thrived over these last years, from Dear Evan Hansen and Next to Normal, to My Avenue Q and In the Heights and Hamilton, they all sit on Jonathan Larson's shoulders, the creator of Rent.
Right.
Because if I can go straight into Rent, what did Jonathan say? I want to make musicals about my characters, our stories, our music. And that's what Rent did. And what Rent proved is that you can make a contemporary musical that will appeal to so many people. You can also make a musical that is different from every other musical. So in so many ways, what Rent did is it didn't usher in a new era of rock musicals per se. It ushered an era of risky musicals.
Right.
And here we are now, 29 years later, and we have all these new musicals. And that's a great place to be in. And by the way, the other thing I'll add about that, since it's the week of the Tonys, is that we've exceeded 14 million people in attendance this year. And if you go all the way back to that year of Rent, we were under 9 million people. So our audience is 50% bigger in 2025 than it was in 1996.
Why do you think that is in terms of the audiences? Because ticket prices are still really high.
I know. We still complain about ticket prices, and yet here we are. I also want to say something, I think that when we opened up the gates of accessibility, not only through our $20 lottery at Rent.
Right, which you were a part of that.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we could talk about that later. But so we opened up accessibility through that, but also through YouTube and Spotify and the ready availability of all of that music for young kids.
Yeah.
So young kids are exploring and learning about shows like Hamilton or even Beetlejuice well before they ever get to see it on Broadway.
Right.
And that played a role. And frankly, I think that those competition performance shows on TV had some positive impact on us, because suddenly they were saying live performance is cool. Right. And we can thank, to some degree, American Idol and The Voice for that.
That's really interesting. When I haven't been to New York in a while. I'm really due for a trip. And when I'm on social media and I see like a curtain call for Death Becomes Her or whatever, it lights me up, and I love to watch them. I never want to be the dude that records the curtain call, but I'm glad that other people do. Do you have a take on that? The curtain call recordings?
Oh, they're great. And what they are capturing is an experience that is unique to the theater and nothing else.
Right. You had to be there.
And in this digital era that we have all watched progress over the last 25 years, remember when rent starts, there's no such thing yet as buying a ticket online. There's no such thing as Instagram. There's no such thing as Facebook. There's a cell phone, but it's a flip phone. We don't have we don't have any of that. And now in this digital era, I would also hypothesize that people are spending so much time with their digital tools that going to the theater is this oasis of imagination, feeling, and stimulation that's totally different. And then that goes straight to what you're saying is these curtain calls are so exciting because when we sit down in that theater at 8:00 in the evening, right, for that 8:00 curtain,
right, we
don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And we have that sense of excitement. And then that show plays out that hopefully, that in success, surprises us, pricks our ears in whole new ways, and then makes us stand up and cheer at the end. And here we all are as this community, the audience, the orchestra, the ushers, and of course, the extraordinary casts on stage.
Yeah.
Let's just face it. The greatest performers in the world are singing and dancing and acting their hearts out at those 40 Broadway theaters every night at 8:00.
It's thrilling. I often talk about this on the podcast. I will cry in musicals for no reason. It won't have to be a sad scene. I'm just overwhelmed by the beauty and there's just something, and I just start crying. And there's a moment in your book where you first see Jonathan Larson's Tik Tik Boom, which was called something else at the time. And you're overcome with emotion. And it's all of these threads coming together. And I just related to that moment so much. There's something about a musical that can help us get to our feelings, right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh my gosh, with pleasure. Well, there's this feeling I think we all get sometimes when we're watching something so enthralling in which we say, how is this author telling my life story?
Yeah.
Because I see so much of myself up there on that stage.
Yeah.
And when I went to go see Tik Tik Boom, which at the time was called Boho Days, it was the first presentation Jonathan ever did of it. It was in the fall of 1990. And, here's his show about a guy turning 30 who feels like his head's about to explode, right? Yeah. Feels this constant theme, tick, tick, boom.
Yeah.
He's going to explode. Why? Because he's a 30-year-old composer of rock musicals that nobody wants to produce.
Right.
Because he lives in the 4th floor walk-up Greenwich apartment in which all of his roommates have to take turns using the bathtub in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because he's in a relationship with a woman who he really likes and cares for, but he knows she's not right for him. And he's asking, do I have the guts to leave?
Yeah.
Do I have the guts to be lonely, or do I just stay safe? And then finally, he has a best friend who's offering him a job as a copywriter at an ad agency that will finally allow him to pay the bills, get some health insurance, maybe get a better apartment. So the question is, do I go for that safe job and make some dough, or do I keep writing rock musicals that nobody wants to produce?
Yeah.
And I'm watching that, and I'm like, the hair on my arms is standing up because those songs are so great. And I'm going, oh my God, you're telling my life story, Jonathan. And you're telling it through the most catchy, emotional, gut-wrenching music. I was crying, I was cheering, and I had this great sense of this catharsis. It was like a cascade, like, So I wrote him a letter the next day saying, I want to produce your musicals.
Right. And you include the letter in the book. So did you get it back? Did you keep a copy? How did you still have the letter? Or you just remember what you said?
No, of course. I kept a copy. People have asked me, how did you remember everything?
Yeah.
To do a memoir that starts when I'm 9 and goes through, the age of 40, whatever. And one of the ways is that I said that I was a letter writer, and for whatever reason, anytime I would write letters to friends in high school.
Yeah. Like
I was away at camp or something, or they were away, and I would go to Kinko's and I would copy the letters before I sent them.
That's incredible.
So
because it wasn't like you could take a picture on your phone. Like you had to get in a car and go do a thing.
Yeah.
And you would do that. Incredible.
And I would do that. I guess I had my eye on the future.
Yeah. Well, the letter to Jonathan is quite something. It's very complimentary, but you also pitch ideas to him. It's like there is an audacity to you in your life where you kind of put yourself out there. You're kind of bold. You believe in yourself. You believed in yourself, right? You had a lot of obstacles, but there was something inside you that you believed, right?
I know. I was this bizarre kid who felt like an outsider in so many different ways. An outsider because I was adopted, an outsider because I had the shame of being a poor Jewish kid, and it was embarrassing and shameful to be a Jewish kid who's poor in the United States of America in the 70s, at a time when the Jewish community was gaining affluence every year.
Right. I didn't connect it to the Jewishness, like the poor, that they kind of exacerbated each other in a way.
And of course, feeling like an outsider as my burgeoning sexuality was coming into play, and I was realizing as a teenager I'm gay. I felt like an outsider over and over and over, and yet it just meant I felt lonely. But it didn't mean I didn't believe in myself. And I know I've just given you a terrible double negative. So let me phrase that.
It's all good.
And I was an outsider who believed in himself.
Right. I relate to that in a lot of ways, because sometimes I look back at things that I did and I'm like, I can't believe I had the balls to try that. Or like I didn't realize how steep the odds were, or like I didn't know what I didn't know.
Oh, that is so great.
If I knew, I might not have done it.
Dennis, can you give me one example of that? Like when you were like, how in the world did I do that?
When I moved to Los Angeles because I was in love with all the creative arts, dancing, singing, acting. And I came out here to do a musical theater workshop. And I auditioned for Madonna's Blonde Ambition tour during one of the breaks when I was working on cruise ships as a dancer. Yeah. And I didn't get the gig, but the experience was so rich and kind of funny to me because I was a huge fan and I daydreamed about, we're going to become best friends and this is what it's going to be like. And so I wrote this first-person story about it. It ended up being called Confessions of a Boy Toy Wannabe. And I'd never really written anything but...
I love it.
I'd never really written anything but, school papers or things like that. I never thought of myself as a writer. But I was like, okay, I like this. There's something here. I went to the newsstand and picked up all these different magazines, and I sent query letters to all these different magazines, and then nothing came through, and so I picked another level of them and sent them to them, and there was an editor at Movie Line magazine, which was the coolest magazine for movie lovers at the time. It's just, Movie Line is legend, and the editor there was like, I really like your letter. If your story is as funny as your letter, I think we've got something here, and they assigned me, but I think I took those steps. It wasn't an accident. And I kept kind of pushing. And so I think that was sort of a long shot kind of thing that I took the chance of. Because I think somebody with more knowledge is like, that's not how it works, kid. And so things like that, where I look back and I go, man, I really thought, I didn't know how steep the odds were or whatever. So that's an example that I think of.
You know what I love? You're reflecting on something I always say. Write that letter.
Yeah.
Because writing a really thoughtful, funny, compelling, dramatic letter with chutzpah, which I'll define for anyone who doesn't know a little bit of Yiddish, is guts.
Yeah.
Moxie. It pays off because we don't get enough great letters. So when you can arrest someone's day if you send them a great letter.
That's really interesting.
You did. And you did.
Yeah.
And I did with Jonathan.
Yeah. That letter was quite something. I want to get into Rent more later, but I want to go back to the beginning of your book. What made you want to write it initially? What was your instinct or your goal when you were taking this on?
To figure out where I am in this world on my 80, hopefully something, or 90, hopefully something journey of life.
Yeah.
It was an existential exercise for me. Where am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? Yeah. So I wrote it for myself. I didn't have a contract. I never pitched a book to anybody. I just started writing this because I had to make sense. That was, some people make sense of their lives by going to church on Sunday or going to temple on Saturday. Some people make sense of their lives by going to the ashram.
Yeah.
I made sense of my life by writing it.
Yeah. People often ask me, I've written a couple of books and things like that, and they would say, why do you write? And it's like, I think I do it because it helps me figure out what I think and what I believe. Because you have to put enough work into it. You have to rewrite and draft that it becomes kind of focused into like, okay, I can stand behind this. That's why the sort of the spontaneity of social media doesn't appeal to me. I like to sort of think about things. And it helps me figure out what I believe. It helps me make sense of the world, I guess, and my place in it. I relate to that a lot.
And then, then on some level, it was this incredibly challenging and rewarding creative process in which, let's face it, I'm usually the producer. I'm the nurturer.
Right.
I'm the cheerleader. I'm the critic. I'm the seller, not Jeffrey Seller, but ticket seller.
Yeah.
And in this time, I was the author, the director, and the writer.
Yeah.
I was out of it, and I had to challenge myself to say, can you, Jeffrey, you can't just write your story. You have to write a compelling story that has a beginning and a middle and an end, and a compelling story in which every chapter has its own beginning, middle, and an end, so that the end of every chapter will persuade or compel the reader to go on to the next chapter. And that is a hard task.
Yeah. I remember finishing the first chapter and I'm going, oh, I like this guy's voice. He can really write. It felt like, oh, I'm in good hands. There was that sort of payoff at the end of the first chapter that's kind of devastating, actually. But I was like, the writing voice is really good. I really like the writing voice. What was it like to get notes? Because you were probably used to giving notes.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to get notes, but it's necessary. So I had like I had two advisors who were both brilliant published nonfiction writers, both journalists actually. And my friend Ari Shavit, the great writer of My Promised Land, the Israeli journalist who wrote a huge book about Israel about 15 years ago. And he would give me a feedback, as well as another great New York Times journalist for New York Times Magazine named Michael Sokolov. And he read it and gave me notes. And the job, when they give you notes, just take it in.
Yeah, thank you.
Don't respond. Don't fight. Don't argue. Just take it in and let it move through your body, and then see how it changes my perspective. And in both instances, their notes were essential and helpful.
Yeah. There's an honesty to your book an audacity to it that I really respected. You write, about sex quite vividly. And I could see somebody being like, "Oh, I love Hamilton. I'm going to pick up this book and read about that." And then they're in a steam room, having two guys pleasure them. I think that's important. I think there's too much puritanical shame around sexuality. I wish I had a different upbringing around that stuff. I think in a way, and so I respected it, and I related to it. Why was that important to you?
Well, as I started writing the book, I realized I'm going to write this for a lot of kids who feel like outsiders.
Yeah.
And there are going to be a lot of kids who haven't had experience with loneliness and sex. No, they've had experience with loneliness. They haven't had a lot of experience with sex, but they have a lot of fear or anxiety or questions about it.
Yeah.
And in a way I thought, so my job is to help to demystify it. And I can demystify it by explaining what it's like to be a young man who is having sex with a man for the first time.
Yeah.
In some ways, I did that because I wanted to be of service.
That's interesting.
The scene that you're describing is really a scene about loneliness.
Right. It's a birthday, right? It happens on a birthday.
It's a scene about what many of us do to assuage or make go away for a very temporary period, our loneliness.
Yeah.
And I only wrote that scene to manifest my loneliness, not to necessarily titillate.
But the way you wrote it was very frank, and I appreciated that. It was like, you're not like cutting to this thing. It had, I like that part of the book. I thought it was meaningful. And I was a late bloomer as well. So the moment where you discovered masturbation, I was like, yep.
That was so late to be 15 and a half years old.
Yes. We were born like 2 weeks apart, and it's like I was in freshman PE, and everyone had matured but me, and I was like, "When is?" No,
and you're like, I still have no pubic hair,
yes.
and I'm really embarrassed.
Yes, and we're in the locker.
Well, we've just identified another reason to feel like an outsider.
Yeah, no, I related that so much. Talk to me about Cardboard Village, the term Cardboard Village, and I see your face sort of. Clothes in pain around it, and it was where you lived.
I wish I could stop talking about Cardboard Village, but we're not done.
Well, it's the term too. It's the term. Yeah. It's not like, it's not. The name connotes. The dynamic of it. It's not like, Hudson Street. It's not an innocuous name. It's a name that evokes something.
Yeah, no, it's a poetic name invented by child poets, and it was the way they described the neighborhood my family had to move to after my father had bankrupted the family business, gotten into a motorcycle accident that left him with a form of dementia called aphasia and left him diminished. And we were on welfare. So we had to move from our quite nice house to this neighborhood in which the houses were built on slabs of concrete. We had no basements. And because the houses were built with those tar shingles you'd see on roofs instead of bricks, all the kids from the city would say, "Oh, you live in Cardboard Village," meaning you live in the terrible part of town. And one Sunday school teacher, not thinking it was possible that anybody in his Jewish religious school class could possibly live there, once described our neighborhood not as Cardboard Village, but as a ghetto. And I wanted to, with my ears burning red with embarrassment, I was afraid I would be discovered. And
one more thing to feel secretive about. One more secret. One more thing.
I live in Cardboard Village, and I'm ashamed of it.
Yeah.
And I was, if someone ever said, "Where do you live?" in Oak Park, I didn't want to answer because I was afraid they would determine that, all the people that live south of 9 and east of Coolidge are in Cardboard Village.
Yeah.
Whereas if in the other three quadrants, you live in the nice part. And it was this source of shame all the way. I mean, I went to someone's 50th birthday party a few years ago, and I ran into a TV writer who said, "Oh my God, I grew up in Oak Park too. Where in Oak Park did you live?" And that shooting hot wave went through me because I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be found out." And here I am. I am the producer of Hamilton. I have 4 Tony Awards. I have an Olivier Award, and I even have I didn't have an Emmy yet, but and I am ashamed again. I'm going to be found out. So I said the only way is to go right through it. So I go right into the belly of the beast, and the first 2 words of this book are Cardboard Village, and that's where it is.
Yeah. Your family dynamic is so interesting to me, and I came to believe in the last 10 years or so, I have dad stuff, dad damage, dad things that I never really thought about before. And the difference is my dad was a good provider, but he never saw me. He never said he was proud of me. He never went to any shows. He was not interested in me. And I figured that out before I could probably even talk. Like, I knew he was never going to come to my shows and everything's like that. And I had you know what? And it's okay because what makes me sad is that how clear that was to me. You had a father that believed in you, took you to shows, told you he loved you, but was really, not a very responsible person, struggled with money. There were similarities and then there were big differences, but I related to the pain of the father stuff so much reading it. Can you talk to me? There's a chapter where your dad decides to be a clown. And I thought, this feels like something out of a movie.
I know. Like, it definitely falls under the you can't make this shit up category.
Yeah. So on the one hand, it was like, oh, this is interesting because they will share this performance thing. They will connect over this desire to perform or to be part of a show. And then on the other hand, it became something else that distracted him from really stepping up as a provider, right?
Oh, my God. So just to contextualize, my father had bankrupt the family industrial tool business, which was actually a thriving business that until he bankrupted, made us part of the upper middle class. And after that bankruptcy, he was in this terrible motorcycle accident that left him diminished. And then he became, after that, as he started to recover in some way, shape, or form, a process server, the guy that goes around serving subpoenas and summons to people who are in trouble. And that's how he made a living for us. And he didn't do it all that well. And he didn't make that much money, but it was our form of subsistence. And when I am a high school junior and I'm now thoroughly invested in being in plays, producing plays, being on the management committee for the youth theater and involved with high school theater and the Thespians, my dad comes to me one day and says, I'm going to join the Masons. And I'm like, what? And he said, I want to be in the Shrine Circus. The Shrine Circus was an annual event in Detroit at the State Fairgrounds that was a big professional circus with, all the big acts and the animals, but they would use the Shriners as for the clown unit.
Yeah.
And my father said, my goal was to be in the Shriners and be a clown. And I am like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
My father also is this 6'3", 250-pound man. He is not particularly limber. He is not an athlete. He is not someone who's going to be able to get into the clown car with 9 other guys.
Right.
But he wants to be a clown, and he just wants to make children happy.
Yeah.
And there's something so sweet. And he does have a facility to make all those funny balloons, the puppy balloons or the elephant balloons or whatever the heck. And so he joins the Masons. He becomes an apprentice. And in the spring of my senior year of high school, he joins the Shrine Circus. And lo and behold, I mean, you know, he's barely putting food on the table, and yet he goes out and he employs some seamstress to sew him a costume
Right.
that he designed himself. And then he's got the clown makeup, and he starts signing up for, you know, shifts at the circus. And over the course of like 3 or 4 weeks, the Shrine Circus, they would do like 3 shows a day. And my father, instead of working, was at the circus all day, every day. And one day he comes home with a second clown costume. And my mother goes, "What is that?" He goes, "I need 2 costumes." She's like, "Why?" He's like, "Because I need a costume for tomorrow so we can then wash this one." And my mother's like, "I can't fucking get a winter coat and you're buying 2 costumes?"
Yeah.
And then we have a blow up. And, you know, when I finally go see him do the circus, I don't even tell him. I just secretly.
That little moment where you see what he's doing, it's so poignant.
And then there he is, like making the balloon for the little girl in the wheelchair. And it was so sweet. And it was like, it turned out to be the perfect encapsulation of both his love and his affection for children, and his desire to be of service. But at the same time, he was impoverishing our family.
Right. And he would say, "I'm going to do better," and he wouldn't. Like, it was so frustrating and heartbreaking in a way. And yet he would take you to musicals. Like, I don't remember going to a movie. I never went to a movie with my father. Like, so he's taking you to Pippin.
And then he takes me to the 2 musicals in 8th grade, Pippin and A Chorus Line, that completely blew, like, are explosions. They're my Tik Tik Boom, but it's a positive. It's like, boom, oh my God, I didn't know a show could be like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I see all of these performers on the stage in A Chorus Line, and these people, these characters, who are wearing barely any costumes. It's like they're wearing gym shorts and leotards and, you know, torn off T-shirts, are pouring, and there's no set, and they're pouring their hearts out, their dreams, their yearnings, their disappointments, their insecurities.
Yeah.
About being gay, about dads who cheat on moms, or dads who are, like your dad, absent.
Yeah.
And, or a young man who takes a job as a drag queen, because that's who he is and how shameful he is when his dad sees him.
Yeah.
And the score is contemporary, and it doesn't sound anything like Rodgers and Hammerstein. And I'm thinking, I just love these people.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's a Broadway musical. Wow. And guess what? What's the next genuinely contemporary musical after A Chorus Line? I
don't know.
Rent.
That 20 years later?
Yes, 20 years.
It took 20 years, because I'm looking at the big movies, the musicals that you've done, and also then this journey as a young person. I'm like, I have that same taste in musicals. Like, I remember being in The Music Man, and I'm like, if I have to do Shapoopy one more time, like, I just didn't connect. And then we did Pippin, and I was like, oh, I get that. This feels something else. So I like your taste, basically. I share that.
Well, Pippin was a revelation, because though it's a story of son of Charlemagne, this prince named Pippin, it's about, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
And the score sounds a lot more like Carly Simon in the 70s or James Taylor in the 70s than the Gershwin brothers. And of course, through Bob Fosse's lens, it becomes this contemporary musical that's sexy and sinewy and magical, and totally contemporary.
Yeah. Talk to me about Mrs. Shively, or Miss Shively. She was. I had one of those. She was Miss Jaquess. But talk to me about Miss Shively.
Miss Shively was like my first artistic mother. And I've never used that construction before, Dennis.
Yeah.
She was the 6th grade music teacher. And when I showed up for middle school in 6th grade, I was just enamored with this young, beautiful, ambitious and firm teacher who occupied the choral room, who sponsored the boys' ensemble in which we would have practice at like 7:30 in the morning on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where I first learned I'm getting married in the morning and there's nothing like a dame, and would put on the Pops concerts and the plays. And not only did she mentor me that year, she also started talking about what she would do at night, which is go perform at a community theater called Stagecrafters, where she was saying that she was in this production of Oliver and she was playing the flower salesman who sings "Who Will Buy This Wonderful Morning."
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what is this group? And she's like, well, it's a theater troupe. It's not professional, but it's adults and kids.
Right.
I'm like, wow, well, who plays Oliver? And she's like describing a boy that was my age. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. And then toward the end of my sixth grade, while she and I were working on building a yellow brick road for a production of The Wizard of Oz that she was directing that year, the eighth graders were playing all the principals. I was a sixth grader, so I was a munchkin. But as we were talking about the future, she said, I think we're going to do Oliver next year. And I said, oh, I want to play Oliver. And she said, no, you should play the Artful Dodger. It's the better part.
Right. She kind of clued you in.
And then all that summer between sixth and seventh grade, I looked forward. I was like, I can't wait to get back and see Miss Shively, and we'll have auditions, and I'm going to play the Artful Dodger, and we're going to do Oliver. And I came back for the first day of seventh grade, and I ran to the music room, and she wasn't there. There was a new teacher named Miss Palmy, and she told me that Miss Shively moved away. And I never saw her again.
Yeah.
And, but I did remember that she did plays at a theater troupe called Stagecrafters.
Yeah. And you cold called them.
So
you're good at the cold call. You will pick up the phone and do that stuff. It's amazing.
Write the letter and pick up the phone, and don't send a text. Please don't send a text. God knows, stop sending me texts. But I picked up the phone and I called them, and they were having auditions for another play, and they needed a 10-year-old boy, and I was 11, and I went and auditioned and got the part, and now I was part of Stagecrafters. Who opened that door for me? Miss Shively.
For me, it was Miss Jacobs, and she was the first person that made me feel special. That's like, oh, I see you. You're creative. I remember she created these workbooks for Christmas for all the kids, and they had puzzles and things like that. And there was an extra one. So somebody got 2.
Oh, my gosh.
And I got 2. I was the one that got 2. But when somebody sees that thing that's special about you, and I don't know if they think of it this way, but they're like, oh, that's the little gay artistic boy. I get it, you know?
Well, we are special.
Yeah. Yeah, it meant a lot. So when you got this show, you wrote about how I like doing shows with the adults. I don't need to be around. I don't want to be in some kid's show. You were kind of a little snobby about it. You counted your lines.
Yeah.
And you kind of crushed it. And speaking of crushing it, your bar mitzvah, I feel like you kind of nailed that.
Well, what better story for a kid like me than Noah?
Yeah.
Right? I get to tell the story of Noah's Ark. That's the story from the Torah that I get to read in Hebrew and then translate.
Yeah. And then, but the family also kind of pulled it together for the bar mitzvah.
Yeah. I mean, my parents put on a bar mitzvah that they could certainly not afford.
Right. And
they stretched themselves farther than they could really go because they loved me so much.
Yeah. And
I don't know how, I think they ultimately paid some of the bills with some of my bar mitzvah money that I earned. But after some challenges, they put on the most beautiful bar mitzvah. And, my mom died a year ago, and my dad died a decade ago, and I still have my bar mitzvah album.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned your mother passing. I'm sorry. Did she read the book or any parts of the book or before she passed? Or she obviously probably knew you were working on it. Believe it or not,
the book makes very clear that my parents were very proud of me. And I don't think my mother could have been any more proud of me. But when I was writing the book, I knew how honest I was being.
Yeah.
And how revealing I was being about the chaos and pain of our nuclear family. Yeah. So I never shared with her that I was writing it because I didn't know if I would publish it. So I was like, there's no reason to share this with her and make her upset.
Yeah.
If I'm not even going to publish it. So I'll wait. And if I get a publisher and I actually publish the book, I'll tell her. And then we'll go through it together and we'll process her own shame, her own guilt, and her pride and joy, and happiness. Because that's there too when she gets to come to the opening night of Rent on Broadway.
Yeah.
And sadly, this is also another bizarre moment of my life. The same week that I make a deal with Simon & Schuster, she calls and tells me that she has pancreatic cancer.
Ugh.
And as she's crying on the phone and she's afraid, and we're now entering this new phase where at 83 years old, I go, oh, we're here. Mm. This is how it ends. So I couldn't tell her about the book because we were thrust into all of the drama of medicine.
The treatments and
And she chose very bravely and clearly not to have chemotherapy, which is of dubious efficacy when you have pancreatic cancer.
Right.
And because she passed in 6 months with really just a straight downhill trajectory, she was never well enough again for me to tell her about the book with enough time to process it.
Right.
So I never told her, and she didn't know the book existed. Yeah. But now this book is it's a beautiful and painful but true tribute to both her and my dad.
Right. They loved you.
They loved,
and that was clear, and you knew that.
Yeah.
When you come out to them, after all the drama that's already unfolded in your family, it's kind of a non-event. Not a non-event, but there's sweetness to it. It's not the, they're going to disapprove thing. It's a different dynamic than we see in so many stories of people in our generation especially.
Well, I mean, my father had of the greatest reactions anybody could ever receive, which is that my father, who was a terrible provider, who impoverished the family, who cheated on my mother more times than I even know, who could be tempestuous, lose his temper, scream, shout, all of that. I say that I'm gay, and he says, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's no different than whether you're a righty or a lefty.
Which is kind of profound, right?
It's profound.
Right? It's one of those things that academics would use as arguments, and he just came off with it off the top of his head.
My father, who never went to college and suffered from brain damage from the accident, could be a great intellectual sometimes.
Yeah. There's a wisdom there and there's a self-awareness.
Right.
He knew.
He had these moments where he was not knowledgeable from reading books, but where he had wisdom about the world and life and humanity. Not always, but boy, he sure did have it there, didn't he?
Yeah.
And it was such a great analogy because he was right.
Yeah, he was right. Was it a relief to come out to them, or did you know they would kind of be okay? Or after all you'd been through, it wasn't that big a deal?
You know what? It's always a relief.
Yeah.
And it's always hard.
Yeah.
It's and that's another reason I wrote this book, because I want young gay guys, and there's a lot of young gay guys, and there's a lot of young gay guys who like theater, to know you're not alone. And
right.
here's one way of how it might go.
Yeah.
And then you feel like you're inside and part of the group and not an outsider. But yes, I was nervous to tell them, and I was relieved by their loving, matter-of-fact response.
Yeah. It was nice to read. You go to college and you fall in love, and it's Andrew Lippa.
I know. I fall in love with my best friend is my first boyfriend.
Yeah.
He's also my theater collaborator because we do shows together in which sometimes we're in them, sometimes I direct them and he music directs them. And as we talk late at night about West Side Story and Evita and Sweeney Todd, and he's a great piano player, I say, hey, you like piano and you like musicals, you should write them.
Yeah. And now he went on to become a great composer. And I'm trying to remember
composers of Addams Family and The Wild Party and Big Fish and John and Jen, and high schools and community theaters are doing Addams Family every day of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. The conversation that you guys have where you reveal your feelings to each other.
Yes.
Was so beautiful. It was almost like, and you guys were, I had crushes like that, but I don't think I ever had the courage to say the thing or it never unfolded that way. It was almost like, wow. It was, I related to a lot of it, but it never went as well. That was lovely. You both had the same feelings for each other. That must have been intoxicating.
And so scary.
Yeah.
To finally say it.
Yeah.
Because he's my best friend and we'd been best friends for a year. We'd known each other our entire lives because we both grew up in Oak Park, though he grew up in the nicer part. He did not, well, anyway, the book will reveal all of that. Yeah. But it's so scary to be 19 years old, or was I was 20, I guess, to be 20 years old and say to your best friend who thinks you're straight, I'm in love with you and I'm gay. I didn't have the guts to say I'm gay. I'm in love with you and I want to kiss you. Oh my God. I'm getting nervous right now.
Right. But you had the courage to say it. And it was received well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys were together for a while.
6 years.
6 years. And then you describe the breakup and how heartbroken you were. And you were in New York at this time. Yeah.
Dennis,
because you thought you thought you were done. You were going to be married, and this is it.
Dennis, you are very good at this because you are like, I don't know. I feel like I'm in therapy, but
I related to so much of it. Like I said, we're the same age.
I thought we would be together forever, and when we broke up, I thought, and now I'll be alone forever.
Yeah, and you would cry at night.
And of course, I was I was devastated because I thought I'll be lonely forever. Yeah. And then, of course, I went to this club, Private Eyes, and found this gorgeous guy and went home and had sex that night.
Yeah. It was awesome. He was lovely. But also at that time, I would imagine, if a relationship like that ended with the specter of AIDS over everything, you thought you were safe from it. And now you're like, I have to go try to date somebody with this going on.
No, I was so afraid of having sex with anybody else because of the specter of AIDS. And I don't even know, you can't tell every story, but at one point I even went to one of those making safe sex fun workshops at the Gay Men's Community Center. Yeah. Because I was scared and I needed help.
Yeah.
And we were all afraid of getting AIDS. And our younger generation, they just don't understand that, men born between 1950 and 1970, a third of those gay men died of AIDS. And in some of those years, half of them died.
Yeah.
You're born in 1958, 59, 60. The problem is they got AIDS before anyone knew what it was.
Right. Right. And
those of us born in 64, less men got AIDS because when we started having sex, if we started having sex in college, it was already 1982 and we knew. But if you're having sex in 75 to 80, you don't know it. It's out there, but you don't know it.
Yeah.
Such a scary time.
I was a late bloomer and kind of prudish and afraid and stuff like that. And I think it kind of saved me in a way because by the time I was having the opportunity to do things like that, I was aware. It was, and I look at people younger than me or older than me, and I was like, oh, they had no idea.
But we never really knew what is,
Yeah.
they knew approximately what you could and couldn't do, but you were never positive. It's like someone always wound up getting HIV and they said, but I didn't have intercourse.
Right.
And maybe they were lying.
Yeah.
But you never knew really where the boundary was between safety and danger.
So when you connect with Jonathan Larson and he's actually writing about this, I would imagine that is incredibly exciting, but also like, oh, I don't get a break from this. Like, what was it like to take on that topic while you're in the middle of it?
Oh, no. It was so powerfully therapeutic. It was like, oh, that was it. You're writing about my and our lives right now.
It was galvanizing.
What does it mean to not sell out? What does it mean to hang on to your values as an artist, as a maker of things, and not sell out? Yeah. What does it mean to fall in love with a man or a drag queen or someone with HIV? What does it mean when someone gets HIV and it's your friend?
Yeah.
And you're going to your friend's funeral. No, that's one of the reasons I think Rent was so powerful, because it was a musical that was helping to show us who we are with the power of music, which transcends the everyday.
Yeah. It gave you somewhere to put all of this anxiety and all of these feelings and all of this stuff.
I mean, I just remember how powerful it was that I brought a friend of mine who for a minute was a boyfriend, who I had sex with, and who was someone who had to come out to me to tell me he had tested positive for HIV.
Yeah.
And I just remember taking him to the final dress rehearsal of Rent on Broadway and how the cascade of feeling he had.
I can't imagine.
Rent made him feel seen.
Yeah. I can't imagine how overwhelming that would be. All those emotions.
Yeah.
Coupled with Jonathan's loss, which I want to talk about in a minute. But you were a performer. You were into kind of directing at times and then also producing. When did producing take front and center? When did you realize, okay, this is where I'm going with this?
Yeah. Well, I'll just peel it back a little. So when I was in my youth theater group at Stagecrafters, so though I did like those adult plays, I did the kid plays too. Sure. And I'm in this play. It's, by the way, I'm going to go all the way back to 8th grade and then I'll fast forward. But I am in this play in the 8th grade. It's with the youth theater group. And I am having a very good time as the character called the Jack in the Box in this play called The Adventures of Popcorn Pete.
Yeah.
And as we're on stage and we're doing the play, I'm also watching everything that's going on. And I make 3 observations. 1, this is a really silly title. Like I notice when people say, hey, you're in a play, what are you in? And I'm like always a little embarrassed, like, oh, right. The Adventures of Popcorn Pete. I know, really stupid. Number 2, I'm having this inchoate notion that this play isn't very good, that there's no conflict.
Right.
I don't even know the word major dramatic question yet, but I intuit that there's no major dramatic question.
Right.
And then for 3, the audiences are very meager. So I say, who picks the play? And they say, well, the play reading committee. And I say, well, I'm going to be on the play reading committee. And the minute that I go on the play reading committee, and then of course very quickly become the chairman of the play reading committee, is the first time I start to become a producer, because that is the single first and most important decision I make, which is what play to do.
Yeah.
Now, if you fast forward, I keep performing in plays in high school and then a little bit of college, but I'm always looking at the big picture.
You're thinking like a producer.
What should we do?
Yeah.
How do we sell the tickets? How do we get the money? I'm the big idea guy. I'm the forest guy, not the individual tree guy.
Yeah. And
that advances me through college, where I direct shows and produce shows and teach theater. And, and when I get to New York, I keep doing all of it. even while I'm getting my second job as a booking agent for the big producers, Baron von Weissler, and I'm working at one point on a musical that I've commissioned Andrew Lippa and Tom Greenwald and my friend Russell Uris to write, and we get a temple to pay for it, and I'm producing it and I'm directing it. And I'm finding that I can't physicalize. I don't have the choreographer, and I can't physicalize on stage the show as I want it to be. And I realize at that moment, Jeffrey, you are probably an essential producer. You know how to bring people together to make things happen.
Right.
You may not be an essential director. So keep producing.
Yeah.
It was very simple.
It was very clear. I love the moments in the book where you're watching the Tony Awards in your small town, and just the thrill of it, and the way it speaks to you. And there's a moment in one of them where Gower Champion has died, is announced. Was it the Tony Awards or it was another thing?
Oh, God. Yeah. Well, it was not the Tony Awards, but yes.
It was the 42nd Street opening or something.
Oh, yeah. It's the summer of 1980, and 42nd Street is the new musical that David Merrick is producing, that Gower Champion is directing and choreographing, based on a famous movie from the 1930s, I believe. And it's the summer, and I've just come home from my crappy job as a busboy at a deli, and Mom and Dad are just watching the Channel 7 Eyewitness News at 11 o'clock, and I take a shower, and I come out, and toward the end of the news show in Detroit, they say there's breaking news, and the breaking news is that this new musical, 42nd Street, opened on Broadway tonight, and then they cut to the footage.
Yeah.
And the footage is David Merrick coming on stage for the curtain call that you were talking earlier, Dennis, about how much you love so much.
I love curtain call. I like to watch the dynamics and the body language and who likes who and who touches who on the way out.
Go watch this on YouTube.
Okay.
The audience is cheering, and the opening night of 42nd Street is a triumph. And then David Merrick comes on stage, and he says, "I have very bad news." And then they laugh. And he says, "No."
They don't think he's serious. Yeah.
They think he's being sarcastic. And he says, "No, stop." And he says, "I am sorry to report that Gower Champion died today." And the cast behind him crumbles.
Yeah.
They didn't know. And they're hysterical. And you then see just this utter bewilderment. And then the lead, the great actor Jerry Orbach, goes, "Bring the curtain in." And then the curtain comes down. And God help him, David Merrick knew he died, didn't tell anybody, and planned to tell the whole audience after the performance. And of course, in a move of the ultimate promotional sense, he had every TV camera in that theater, and that show became news on every single TV station across the country that night.
And you had to go see it. Now I want to see it.
Yep.
Yeah. So when I read that, it was that dichotomy of the sadness of it, and also, oh, that's very savvy. That's a very savvy move. But also I was thinking of Jonathan Larson passing right at it echoed that to me, knowing that this was your book and that you had produced Rent. Yeah. Like, it felt like, oh, this is foreshadowing in a way for that thing that was going to happen. And yes. Remind the listeners when exactly he passed in the journey of Rent. It was...
Yeah. So, Jonathan's working on Rent for 5 years, and we do many workshops, and there are many moments where we don't know if it's good enough to go on. And it's a difficult and iterative process of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But finally, a month before we start rehearsal in December of 95, he finally is able to give up his job as a waiter at the Moondance Diner, and he throws away his crummy shoes. And I am a full-time artist, and we do the rehearsals for Rent, and it starts to really come into its great form. And we have a fantastic dress rehearsal on January 25th at New York Theater Workshop. There's 199 people, and it's friends and family, but it's the show is there. It's a rousing crowd, And right after the show, he has an interview with a reporter from the New York Times, which was his dream. That was the first time that ever happened. And the last time I ever saw him, he was in the box office because it was the quietest place, talking to the writer Anthony Tomasini. And tragically, he died 2 hours later when he went home and put the tea kettle on of an aortic aneurysm. Oh. His heart exploded. And it was devastating and tragic because, of course, if you listen to this, Roger sing one song, Glory, one song before I go, Glory. I mean, it's like, how did this brilliant artist not only write this show, but write his own life and death?
Yeah.
One song before I go. And the moment that I learned that he died the next morning, of course I was like shocked and numb and sad, but I remembered Gower Champion and David Merrick, and I said, this is going to be a show for the ages. This is going to become legendary.
Yeah. What do you remember generally about going forward? Was everyone just kind of numb? Like, talk about the show must go on. Like,
yeah. Well, that was the day of our first preview.
Yeah.
And I got on the phone with Jim Nicola, who was the artistic director of New York Theater Workshop, and an excellent colleague and friend. And he said, we can't do this. It will be not safe to try to do the show tonight. Everyone's in too much shock. He said, let's just sing through the show with all the actors on their chairs and the band. And we'll do it for his family and friends. It'll be like a memorial. So that day the cast comes to the theater, learns of Jonathan's death, and director Michael Greif explains that they'll just sing through the show that night. And we show up and we take our seats, and we're sad, we're bewildered, we're jittery. I sit next to Annie Hamburger, who's a great downtown producer. And they start the show. And it's almost unbearable to hear Adam Pascal sing one song, Glory.
How does he do it? How do they all get through it?
I don't know. You know why? Because they're artists.
Yeah, that's what you figure it out. You figure it out.
Because people die,
yeah,
and then you take a breath.
Yeah. And
people die and you eat lunch.
Yeah.
And people die and you sing one song, Glory.
Yeah.
And I remember the next two things that happened were so they're doing Act One, sitting down. And by the time they get to La Vie Boheme at the end of Act One, Daphne Rubin Vega, who plays, of course, Mimi in one of the greatest performances in the history of Broadway, gets up on the table and starts doing the La Vie Boheme dance.
Yeah.
And Wilson Heredia gets up, and then they start dancing. By the end of Act One, everybody was dancing on the table. I heard a man behind me say, I didn't know him. He said, I just want to hang out with these people. And what he meant was not the actors. He wanted to hang out with Mimi and Roger and Angel.
Their
and
spirit.
Colin. Yes. And I was like, well, that was what you want to hear. But then it was when Kevin and I, my business partner in life and in Rent, met Jonathan's folks for the first time. And they had learned their son died at, it must have been for them about midnight because they were in Albuquerque 2 hours behind. And they got on the first morning flight to New York. And here they are at this memorial performance of Rent for their 35-year-old son who has just died. And, I was afraid to meet them because I was like, how can I hold, or how do I even respond to their grief?
Yeah.
But you do it. And Al Larson and Nan Larson, he said, Johnny used to talk about you guys all the time. And I have one thing to say to you. Get my son's show on. Get this show on. You must do this show.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. I can't imagine processing all of that and carrying on. We've been talking for over an hour. I have more questions. Do you have more time?
You're so, just keep going.
Okay. I'm going to just stop the recording so the file's not gigantic.
Yeah.
But then
I have 15 more minutes.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So Rent goes on to become a phenomenon. And you obviously probably started making money. What was it like for someone that grew up the way you grew up to have money now?
You know, well, two things happen with Rent. One is that now I'm a full-time producer.
Yeah, you got to leave the day job of booking.
No, I finally get to be now my avocation is my vocation.
Right.
And I remember the sense of satisfaction that, I get to be a full-time producer now.
Right.
I owned this Kevin and I owned this booking agency that was quite good at making a living. And we booked these tours all over the country, and some of the shows we liked and some we didn't like as much, but you do it because it's how you make a living. And now I'm like, now I get to just be a producer every day, all day. And that was such a watershed moment. And I realized I was going to start to earn a lot of money. And that felt great too. But you know what else felt great? That was the same. It was exactly 10 years after I had graduated college. And you know how long it takes to back then, it took exactly 10 years to pay off student loans. And I was making those payments every month for 10 years. And in the same year I produced Rent, I sent my last check to this bank called Wachovia because they were the service of my debt. And I remember sending those last checks and going, I'm done and I'm safe. But the most important thing Rent enabled was Avenue Q.
Yeah.
And then in the Heights, Rent enabled me to keep doing the next one.
Yeah. It opened the door to the next one. Avenue Q was the same year as Wicked, and that was a whole thing. I remember that just as a fan. Like the underdog puppet show versus this big thing, which is great and a phenomenon. You write about that in the book, and you were competing with people that you knew and all of that. What was your vantage point in the middle of that Broadway season? Because there was also a documentary about that year on Broadway that was really interesting.
Yeah, well, in this week of the Tony Awards, it's kind of funny to be going back to that moment because there are a lot of people I am not part of the competition this year. I don't have a show up for Tony Awards, so I get to watch. But the producers and makers of musicals and plays, they put everything into it. And, I always say this is our Super Bowl.
Right.
And everyone tries to say it's just a moment. It's not that important, but it's deeply important for so many of us. And
also it helps commercially.
And it's also, there are financial ramifications, particularly in the category of Best Musical.
Yeah.
In any event, so go back. Avenue Q was not going to win the Tony. Wicked was going to win the Tony. It was the blockbuster of the year, and there was no question about it.
Yeah.
And Broadway had never yet had anything like campaigning for Tonys. Nobody would campaign. It wasn't
the Weinstein, Miramax, Hollywood thing.
And by the way, it's only 2000. Right? The Weinsteins had started doing it in the mid 90s in Hollywood, but no one had done that on Broadway. And the Weinsteins, the Miramax created that whole thing and Hollywood never did it either until the Weinsteins.
Yeah,
came.
no, yeah.
It was promotionally genius. But in any event, we had these fun puppets, and we thought, well, we can't campaign, but puppets, as the show proved, can say so many things that humans can't. So we thought. And it was 2004, so we thought, well, why don't we do a political campaign as if it's like running for president with like red, white, and blue flags and bunting and like a convention, and the puppets will be the leads. So we started creating this whole vote for Q, don't suck, vote for Q, cheeky,
right,
humorous, advertising campaign. And then Jeff and Bobby, the composer lyricist team, they independently came up with a song called Rod's Dilemma. And in this song, the great character of Rod from Avenue Q, the closeted Republican puppet, he has a dilemma, which is he doesn't know who to vote for president of the Rotary Club. Mm-hmm. And he's going around to all the characters in Avenue Q to ask, should I vote for the cute gay guy I have a crush on? Or should I vote for the most popular girl? Or should I vote for this other person is the best person for the job? And, of course, the chorus of the song is everybody telling him, vote your heart. Mm. And that became the theme of our entire campaign, vote your heart. And all we were trying to do is persuade the Tony voters that you don't have to vote for the biggest blockbuster or the biggest box office success,
right,
or the biggest show. Just vote your heart. Vote for whatever you think is the best musical, no matter how big it is or how little it is, whether there's 30 people on stage or 8 people on stage. And I think that song changed forever the dynamic. And the day before the Tonys, every single publication, betting service, prognosticator said Wicked would win 100%. And lo and behold, we won.
And the way you write about it, you kind of had a feeling you were going to, right? You knew.
You know what? Kevin, my business partner, he was more like, I think we're going to win. We're going to win.
Yeah.
But there was a moment, the moment of when we won Best Book of a Musical that night, which was not by any means obvious. We looked at each other and I thought, I think we're going to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you did. I'm projecting, if I were you and I pulled off that upset, I would be thrilled. And there was a part of me that would feel a little bit like, oh my God, we did it. Like almost like, I don't know, like I upset the status quo or something. I don't know. How did you feel in the moment of victory? Was it all bliss?
I often say it was the funnest night in the history of my career.
Fantastic.
Funnest night in my career. The most unexpected. Yeah, no, I didn't feel I felt just total pleasure and satisfaction.
Love it. Yeah. And deserved. And you deserved it. You worked with Lin-Manuel Miranda on In the Heights and Hamilton. I could go on and on about both of those. When did you realize how talented he was? When was the moment when you realized, oh, this is a kind of brilliance that is very, very rare?
I always say about musicals that in order for me to take them on, they have to surprise me and hopefully prick my ear orally in a whole new way. I want to be able to say, wow, I've never heard it sound like that before in a musical. And when we did our very first ever staged reading where actors just sing and read the script of In the Heights at music stands, it was my first exposure to the show. Kevin started working on it before I did to show it to me. And I'm going to watch. And when Lynn comes out with this warm, enveloping Caribbean rap, lights up on Washington Heights at the break of day, I thought, wow, I feel like he's hugging me with his rap. Mm. And I'd never heard it sound like that before. But then when the chorus joined him singing In the Heights, I Wake Up and Start My Day, I went, holy mackerel. I've never heard rap married to Broadway choral music in such a ravishing way. And I was just like, once again, I had that feeling. I'd never heard it like that before. But then a half hour into the show, when a character named Abuela, who's the grandmother of the street for everybody, sings this almost operatic aria about her experience coming to the United States from Cuba with her mother when she's a little girl. and standing in New York where she's experiencing cold and snow for the first time, and then polishing with pride all of the Upper East Side, becoming a maid. And the integrity of becoming a maid, but knowing her life was polishing with pride the whole of the Upper East Side for all the rich families. I thought, how does this young man understand this 70-something-year-old Cuban woman like this? I thought, that was the first time that I thought his talent might be divine.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm using the word with great specificity. I'm not speaking about a drag queen. I'm speaking about God.
Connected to something big, way bigger.
I wondered if his talent was divine.
Yeah. And he continued probably to confirm that it was. There are so many things I could ask about Hamilton, but I want to share a memory that I have with you and then hear you comment on it. I remember when it was shown on Disney Plus. It was during the pandemic. I watched it in my friend's backyard because he had a backyard screen. Yeah, and it was the pandemic. And I remember just being knocked out by it. The beauty of the shot, the whole, everything that Hamilton is. And the same night, I remember President Trump was doing a thing at Mount Rushmore, where he had that appearance at Mount Rushmore. So it was the juxtaposition of these two Americas on this one night on television or in the, in the world. I think about that night, and then I think about the moment we're in now. And that show and those ideas and those people and the people that are in that show. I don't know. And help me make sense of it. Help me process it. What do you make of this moment?
Let me be specific about what I know.
Okay.
Hamilton is a manifestation of our greatest impulses and it's a manifestation of our greatest values as citizens of the United States of America. It is a show for all of us, Republicans and Democrats. It is a show like your show about making something, in this case, a country. It is a show about men and women who have tremendous disagreement and conflict, and then conflict resolution, so that they can get shit done and so that they can move us forward. And because Hamilton, kind of like Pippin for you and I all the way back to the 70s, tells a story of yesterday with the tools of today. Because Hamilton enables young Black kids, Hispanic kids, Asian American kids, and white kids to look up on that stage and say, oh, I'm part of the story. This is about me too. I can be the president of the United States or a senator or a Treasury secretary.
Yeah.
And because of all of that, Hamilton is even more essential to us right now to show us who we can be.
Yeah.
Because we are decidedly not that right now.
Right.
We are experiencing a painful throwing our country into reverse.
Yeah.
Now, and I don't know when we get out of this, but that car is careening backwards at a great velocity, and no good will come from it. But I believe now Hamilton is even more essential because we need those guiding lights.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. And when I saw it, sometimes you see shows and they're good, but you're like, well, the first act could be a little, you have thoughts in your head, little things thoughts about this thing could be this or that. Hamilton, when I was watching it, first of all, on stage in LA, it felt like it was perfect. Like it emerged perfect. It didn't feel like something, well, they moved that and they cut that. It felt like it emerged like this perfect thing, which as a producer is probably not the way it unfolded, but that's what it felt like to watch it, if that makes sense. Every element felt divine. Like that's what it was meant to be. And so I just imagine the creative process is fraught like every creative process. But the way it occurred to me, it was that it was like a perfect thing.
It was not a fraught process.
Yeah.
Every single building block seemed to be the perfect block on which you could put the next block.
Right.
And the next one and the next one. And maybe it was divine, but it was not fraught. It was productive, rewarding, and satisfying.
Right. And there was something in the air about it, something magic happening. It's beautiful. A lot of people say they learn more from failures than successes. I look at your list and it's like hit, like, was there something that didn't go your way that you learned a ton from?
Oh, of course. I worked just as hard with an artist I adore named Sting on his musical, The Last Ship, as I worked on any other musical, including Hamilton.
Yeah.
And he was a consummate artist. The artist who, if you say, I'm not sure this song is quite right, would bring a new song in tomorrow morning. And it was a beautiful, poetic show with a book by Brian Yorkey and John Logan, and Joe Mantello directed it. And it was gorgeous, poetic, but also a show that was about loss and deep loss. And ultimately, it failed at the box office. The audiences were not big enough, and we had to close.
Yeah.
And the pain of having to close a show is gut-wrenching.
I can imagine.
And for days, weeks, months, and years after, I did say to myself, how could we have done better? So I'm always asking, how can I do better?
Yeah. Yeah. What are you working on now? Anything we should get excited about?
I am working. That's what I will say. And I don't like to talk about it because what if it doesn't come to fruition? So when I announce, but I'm working on actually a couple of new plays right now. And I'm working on at least 2 very exciting new musicals right now.
Yeah. Oh, good news. We're excited to hear that. Tell people how they can find the book, how they can learn more about it. It's available everywhere, yeah?
Yeah, the book is called Theater Kid, and not only can you buy it at the bookstore or at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or thedramabookshop.com, but you can also obviously put it on your iPad, but you can also listen to the audiobook. And what's cool about the audiobook is that I did not want to make the reader have to listen to me for 8 hours. So I was able to recruit 15 of my friends and colleagues from Broadway to do all of the other voices. So we kind of made it into a staged reading.
Yeah.
So Danny Burstein and Lindsay Mendez play my parents. And Renee Goldsberry and Lin-Manuel Miranda play Fran and Barry Weissler.
Amazing.
And Annalie Ashford plays Miss Shively and my first boss, Susan Weaving. And Andrew Rannells plays Andrew Lippa. And Conrad Ricamora plays Kevin McCullum. And so many other great performers, Chris Sieber, and so many more. And I think it'll be a really fun listen for folks that like to listen in the car or listen at the beach or wherever they do that instead of reading the text.
What does it mean to be part of the community, to be part of the world?
You know what? I always felt as a kid like an outsider. And one of the reasons I wanted to write this book was because I think I finally got to a place in my life where I felt like I was part of the group and I was in instead of out. And my goal was to write this in part so that other people who feel like they're always outside the group could feel like, I know that feeling, but I'm going to find a group and feel into.
Yeah, I like that. I want to know where you're watching the Tonys. Are you going?
Well, Hamilton's going to perform.
Oh, fantastic.
We just announced that today. The original Broadway cast is coming to do a number.
Amazing.
It's in celebration of our 10th anniversary.
Amazing.
So I'm not sure if I'll be standing in the wings or standing in the back, but I'll be around.
I love it. Well, I can't wait.
You know what? For folks who don't get to participate in the Tonys because they're at home, first of all, being at home is the best place to be. My personal policy is I'm only at the Tonys sitting in a seat when I'm nominated for a Tony. But Otherwise, I love being on the couch with my friends and popcorn or pizza or whatever you want to serve. That's the best way to watch the Tonys. So know that. But the other fun thing is that there is a run through on the Sunday morning of the Tonys where they have to do the whole show with the host and all the numbers. And obviously they walk through the giving away of the awards, but every show has to come and do their number in order. And it's so fun to go to that Sunday morning rehearsal. And I write about that with regard to Rent.
Yeah.
And of course, I will look forward to that a week from Sunday.
That's amazing. Do you have any people you're rooting for or any?
Oh, gosh. Well, as I said to you, it is such a blessing that we had 13 new musicals this season. 5 of them are nominated for Best Musical, and I haven't filled out my ballot yet, so I'm going to keep it to myself.
I love it. Well, yeah, and those categories are packed. And like you said in the book, you write about when there was only 2, and now
I still get to vote.
Yeah.
I'm still like, Jeffrey, you're the kid who was watching Evita, win the Tony, and you're the kid who watched 9 beat Dreamgirls and La Cage beat Sunday in the Park, and now you're the kid who gets to vote.
Yeah. What do you think that the kid that you write about in the book would make of your life?
I believed in myself.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There you go. Okay, this is my final question. You when you set out to write the book, you said earlier in the interview that you had these questions. What does it mean? What is it about? What did you discover? What were the answers?
That my life has been about making things and bringing people together and finding love and community.
I think that's beautiful. And we feel it when we see those shows, and they're more important than ever. So thank you for giving me so much time. I could have talked to you all day. We didn't even get into you getting Marie Osmond to do Sound of Music on tour. So that's a whole other podcast.
It was so wonderful to spend this hour and a half with you.
Well, thank you. The privilege was mine. I was very excited to talk to you and inspired by your story. And I think other people will be as well. So, and beautifully written. Like, it's really good. It's not just like this happened and then this happened. It's artful, and you should be proud of that.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great talk.
Thanks again to Jeffrey Seller. Pick up his book, Theater Kid, or listen to the audiobook. That sounds amazing. You will love it. Okay, so this happened. Last night, I saw the play A Doll's House Part 2 at the Pasadena Playhouse. It was on Broadway a couple years ago. Laurie Metcalf won the Tony for it. It's a sequel to A Doll's House, and it basically examines what happens 15 years after Nora, the main character from A Doll's House, walks out the door on her husband and kids. And I really enjoyed it. I thought the ideas in the play and the way they were exploring them was really rich, really thought-provoking. No easy answers. Her husband character, Torvald, he kind of breaks my heart at one moment. It's just really interesting. Highly recommended. Another terrific night at the theater, and another reason I like living in Los Angeles, where I can see lots of cool things like that. All right, that's enough for this week. I want to remind you that if you want to hear Jeffrey Seller's favorite moments from his 4 Tony-winning musicals, I'm posting that chunk of our interview on Substack and Patreon. Just go there and search for Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay. And for anyone that's already joined, I really appreciate it. I'm trying to build something. I'm trying to create something. I'm also trying to make some money and figure out a way to keep doing what I'm doing. So all the support means a lot to me. All right, that's enough for this week. I'd like to give a shout out to Oscar Rosario for mixing the episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels, Replacement Music. We'll catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye!